All right, so we'll say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Elul, Baruch Meir and Rena Dubin, in honor of their children, in honor of our children, all of the Suburban sons and daughters beginning the year of studying Eretz Yisroel. May their Torah study and mitzvos in the Holy Land merit the release of our precious hostages, the success of our soldiers, the return to their families, and the arrival of Moshiach tzidkeuni bimheira b'yameinu. Amen. Our week of learning sponsors, Josh and Malkie Rosenbloom, and Shalom and Zahava Rosenbloom, Le'ilui nishmas Yisrael, Dovid ben Moshe Hershel, the brother of Rabbi Gedalia. And our Daf Yomi sponsor for today, Arlene, Pianko, Groner, in memory of David Rosenbloom, Yisrael David ben Moshe Hershel, Zichrono Livracha. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the neshama will have an aliyah, the family a nechama, our hostages will be returned b'karav, and our soldiers will be successful b'chol ma'aseh yedehem. We'll say with that, let us begin. So we have a lot to do today. Well, not a lot of Gemara, but actually like a lot the merit Hashem to try to accomplish. So today's daf is Ayin Zayin 77. And we are picking up in Eretz Hashem. Oh, I forgot to print it. Okay. We are picking up in Eretz Hashem. Where did we leave off? Amar Rav Papa. Right? I believe. Amar Rav Papa. Good. 1 second. Yeah, no, I got it. I realized I forgot to print something else. I'm just going to pull it up over here. Okay. So we'll say, so Amar Papa. So remember again, we have a number of different pieces outstanding over here that we're still trying to accomplish. So one of them is the machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. Ultimately, again, in terms of acquiring a boat itself, how does one acquire a svina? So that in Eretz Hashem we'll see. So the svina, and then in Eretz Hashem, in addition to that, we also have now our new machlokes, or our new discussion about osios, about how does one go ahead and acquire a shtarchov, a loan document. So in other words, I loaned $1,000 to Ruvain. I now want to go ahead and give over that shtar to Shimon. How does that happen? So let's go. So we have machlokes about that as well. We saw the mechanics. What was very exciting about yesterday's daf is we saw the mechanics of Moshiach, of Mesira, not so much Hagbah, but we saw the mechanics of those other kinyanim. Rav Papa says as follows: Hi man, if I sell a loan document to my friend, so once again, I lent Ruvain $1,000. I am the creditor. I hold that loan document. I now want to sell that to Shimon. So what is the halacha? I have to go ahead and write a document of sale that says Kanihu b'chol shibuda debei. So Shimon, I'm hereby giving this over to you, and any encumbrances or any liens which are included therein. So in other words, we'll say, so what Rav Papa is essentially saying is that halacha l'maisa, when you sell a loan document, simple mesira is not enough. Mesira or Mashiach is not enough. But rather, again, there must be an accompanying document of sale in order to convey the full power of that shtar. Take a look at the Rashbam. Tzarach l'michtav lei shtar acher kani lecha uleferushe asad hilchas akirabanan depligi alei derebi va'amri achi yichtov v'yimsar v'gam balafari sheikh yichtov lahu shtar. So what's Rav Papa is saying, passing like the Rabbanon against Rebbe, right? Because Rebbe said that a shtar can be sold just with mesira, right? That you don't need that a shtar chova osios niknos b'mesira. The Rabbanon said osios require a shtar as well. Rav Papa is passing like the Rabbanon, and therefore, if you sell a loan document, then halacha l'maisa you must include, or you must go ahead and utilize another document of sale as well. Rav Ashi said as follows. Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi said, I said this over in front of Rav Kahana. So Rav Kahana said the reason that you could sell a loan document is because you include this shtar with this wording. Lo kasav lehachi. But if you did not go ahead and write a shtar like this, then lo kani. Okay, so what's it? Which means that osios, right, a loan document, can only be sold if it is accompanied with an actual document of sale. So Mesira is not going to be enough, there has to be a document of sale. So the Gemara says, here's what's interesting. So Rav Ashi is saying this over. And Rav Ashi says it doesn't make any sense. So what you're telling me is like this, right? Let's just play this out. I go ahead, I lend Reuben $1,000. Now I want to sell the debt. So I'm selling the debt to Shimon. So again, Rebbe will say, let's go with the other part. Rebbe will say, Mesira, I give over the loan document to Shimon, and we're done. That's the sale. The Rabbanan say, no, you must have an additional shtarchov, right? A shtar. You must have an additional document of sale. And our Papa comes along and says, in that document of sale, it has to say, Shmuel Silber is selling to Shimon a loan document, the chol shibuda debei, and any encumbrances that come along with this particular loan. So we'll say, so comes along Rav Ashi says, that doesn't make any sense. Why else am I giving over this document to Shimon? Right? Why must I give over the document to Shimon? Well, to go literally again to be a bottle stopper, right? To go and be a cork for his bottle. In other words, I'm not just giving him over a piece of paper. I'm giving him over a document that has power to it. So why else would I be giving him over the document if not to assign the loan? In other words, why does the shtar itself, the additional shtar, really become necessary? To which the Gemara says, Amrli, he said, yes, in Latzur v'Latzur. Yeah, maybe you are giving him over the piece of paper just to be a bottle stopper, just to be a cork. In other words, without the shtar, there is no clear conveyance of the loan, I will say. Now, of course, what's interesting about this is, what about the fact? So let's just play this out for a second. So once again, I'm going ahead and I lent Reuben $1,000. I now want to sell the debt to Shimon. So as I say, obviously, whenever you're selling a loan, the pashtos loans are sold at a discount, right? Because there's always the possibility of the person not paying the debt. So I'm going ahead. I have $1,000 loan against Reuben, and now I'm selling it to Shimon for $800. Okay. So we'll say, so essentially what's driving Rav Ashi over here is, obviously, if Shimon's paying $800, what is he paying $800 for? What is he paying $800? What is he paying $800 for? A loan. What is he not paying $800 for? A piece of paper. So in other words, Rav Ashi is saying, isn't it clear? Isn't it just clear again from the money that is paid? That Allah L'maisa, he's buying a loan. Why do I need a supporting shtar? To which Rav Kana said, no, it could very well be that what's happening over here, he's overpaying for a piece of paper. In other words, the fact that he's paying a lot of money, the amount of money being paid, at least right now, the Gemara is suggesting has absolutely no bearing on the nature of the transaction. Maybe he's overpaying for a piece of paper, right? So it's overcharging, and depending on the nature of the overcharging, maybe you could cancel. Okay, so that's a detail. That's a detail we have to do with, and that could be a follow-up. It could very well be that Shimon's overpaying for a piece of paper, and he could void the sale because he's overpaying by more than a sixth. But that has nothing to do with the transaction. Halach l'mais, what the Gemara is suggesting right now, is the only way to buy a loan is with a supporting shtar. Taking possession of the loan document itself is not going to be enough to seal the transaction. There has to be a supporting document of sale that says Silber is selling to Shimon this loan document and all the encumbrances and liens included therein. Top of Ayin Zayin 77. Amar Ameimar. Ameimar says, Hilchasa osios niknos b'mesira. So Ameimar posits, Ameimar says, no, osios, just a loan document, could be acquired with mesira. In other words, halacha l'maisa, you don't need another, just gonna put this up. You don't need anything more than mesira. All you need to do is hand it over, and halacha l'maisa, that is enough. Ki Rabbi, in accordance with the position of Rabbi. So Amrle Rav Ashi said to him, La Ameimar, Gimara o Svara. Tell me, is this, where do you know this from? So we'll say, so really what we have over here is a machlok, is Rav Papa and Ameimar. Right? So Rav Papa was saying that osios are only niknos b'shtar. You need a supporting document in order to go ahead and halacha l'maisa acquire the loan document. Ameimar says, no, all you need is mesira, which essentially means I take the loan document and what do? I give it over to Shimon. And once I give it over to Shimon, so we're done. There's nothing more that has to be done. So they asked Rav Ashi asked, they asked Ameimar, so is that a Gemara? Gemara means, is that a tradition? In other words, you learned this from your Rebbe, he learned it from his Rebbe, and it's just been passed down. O Svara, or you are espousing a piece of logic. Which one is it? So Amarle Gemara. So Ameimar responded, this is a Gemara. This is a tradition I have from my Rebbe. Rav Ashi, svara namihu. Rav Ashi says, by the way, it's also a svara. It's also a svara. Now, what's the svara? What's the logic? This is actually very interesting. The osios mili ninu, umili b'mili lo mikninon. So I will say, because listen to this, because essentially what the Gemara is suggesting over here, the svara is that essentially you can't acquire a shtar with a shtar. That's essentially what the logic is. That the loan document, right? The loan document, I lent money to Shimon, right? I lent money to Ruvain. So that's mili, that's words, right? That's words. It's words recorded in a document, but at the end of the day, it's words recorded in a document. So it doesn't make sense to say that the way to acquire words is through words. That the way to acquire a shtar is with a shtar. There has to be some type of other mechanism. Take a look at the Rashba for just a moment. Mili, the osios, mechiras shtarchov, the selling of a shtarchov, selling of a loan document, is mili ninu. The Rashbam says, mili ninu. So, dvarim hu mocher, velo mammon mamish. In other words, I'm not actually selling money, but rather what I'm doing is I'm selling words, right? I'm selling a transaction. Hilchach, maseb yadayim dahainu mesirahu ikar kinyasan. Aval shtar acher lo mahani demili b'mili lo miknu shtar lo yikne b'shtar. So I'll say this is interesting. Again, I don't know that it's the strongest svara, but the logic is you essentially can't acquire one document with another document. Rather, you need some other type of tangible kinyan in order to go ahead and convey ownership of a loan document. Okay, so the Gemara says, is that true? Mili b'mili lo makninon. Is that true that you can't acquire words with words? In other words, that you can't acquire a shtar with a shtar? But after all, the Gemara says, Amar Rabba bar Yitzchak Amar Rav. So this is actually very interesting. But Rabba bar Yitzchak said in the name of Rav the following idea. Shnei shtaroseim. There are two different types of documents. Now, the truth is, of course, there are many more than two different types of documents. But for our purposes right now, there are two conceptual frameworks of documents. So we'll listen to this. Zachu basada, or I should say two different cases. Very interesting. Zachu basada laploni, v'kisu lo asashtar. So here's the case. I go over to two people, Reuven and Shimon. I say, Reuven and Shimon, here's what I want you to do. I want you, both of you, to acquire this field on behalf of Levi. They say, I want to give something to Levi, but I want Levi to acquire it now. So I call over two witnesses. I say, Reuven and Shimon, I want you to acquire it on behalf of Levi. Now, of course, why could Reuven and Shimon do that? Zachin la'adam shelo b'fanav. You can do something objectively beneficial for someone, even without their knowledge or not in their presence. So Reuven and Shimon, I want you to acquire the field on behalf of Levi, and not only that, then I want you to record the entire transaction in a document, and I want you to sign on the document. So this is like one-stop shop. I'm getting everything over here. Reuven and Shimon are going to acquire it on behalf of Levi, and then going to write up the shtar and sign the shtar, therefore memorializing the transaction for Levi as well. So, but the lashon over here is very important. Zachu basada leploni. So I say, Reuven and Shimon, acquire the field for Levi, v'kisvu es hashtar, and write a document. So look at the Rashi for just a moment. Zachu b'sad zeh leploni, ani makna lachem b'sudar zeh sad zu l'tzarech ploni, vein kana la'osa ploni k'mo shetziva lahem. Okay, so the Rashi says the king is sudar. So I give it over to Reuven and Shimon. Reuven and Shimon acquire it on behalf of Levi, and then I tell them also write the shtar. So what's the halacha? Chozer b'shtar vein chozer b'sada. So we'll say. So let's say I changed my mind. So remember, obviously, if I changed my mind before I gave it over to Reuven and Shimon, that's fine. That's my prerogative. But after I give it over to Reuven and Shimon, I can't change my mind, right? They've acquired it on behalf of Levi. That's done. What I can change my mind about is the document, right? So let's say I give it over to Reuven and Shimon. I say Reuven and Shimon acquired on behalf of Levi. They acquired on behalf of Levi. Then I say, you know what? I don't want you to write a document. I will say, by the way, why would I change my mind about a document? Because remember, even though, let's say this is a gift, I don't want, a document has a call, right? A document always has publicity associated with it. I don't want publicity around the fact that I'm giving away land, or for that matter, selling land. I don't want that, because again, remember, we're operating under the assumption over here that people only sell stuff or give away stuff really when there's some sense of duress. So I don't want it. I changed my mind. I don't want the shtar. So the Gemara says, okay, you could change. I could change my mind about the shtar. In other words, I can't change my mind about the kinyan because I already gave it over to Reuven and Shimon. Obviously, it will say, if before I gave it over to Reuven and Shimon, I changed my mind, of course I could change my mind. But after I've given it over to Reuven and Shimon, they've acquired it on behalf of Levi, no backsies, right? That's it. What I can do is change my mind about the shtar. Look at that Rashbam. Chozer b'shtar. Va'afilu amar kisvu utenu t'chozman shelo balia mekabel matana yochol zela kor shlichuso de'in osin shtar bal karcho shenosin de'nifa kocho matana ba'pel lo nicholet tevi matana b'shtar. So again, I both say, so as long as that shtar has not yet gotten to the hands of Levi, I can renege on it. Okay, so that's case one. That's case one. Case two. Al menas shetichtuvu lo asashtar. What happens if I did like this? Reuven and Shimon, I want you to acquire this field on behalf of Levi on the condition that you write a shtar. The condition that you write a shtar. Now we'll say, whenever you make an al menas, so what does that mean? What does that mean? That the acquisition on behalf of Levi is not finalized until when? Until the shtar is written. Right? This whole thing is predicated on the writing of the shtar. So as long as the shtar has not yet been written, then the transaction is not complete. In that case, chozer bein b'shtar, bein b'sada. In that case, then I have the ability to renege on both. Why? Because until the point that the shtar is delivered, the transaction is not really complete. So because it's not complete, I can renege both on the gift as well as on the shtar itself. Look at the Rashbam. What that really means is as follows. Really, the way I'm constructing it is, Reuven and Shimon, I want you to acquire this field on behalf of Levi, but Levi doesn't acquire it until the shtar reaches his hands. That's the almanas. So therefore, again, up until the point that Levi actually gets the shtar, the transaction is not finalized, and therefore I have the ability to renege both on the land as well as on the shtar. Okay, beautiful. So far, so good. What does that do with our topic? So far, absolutely nothing. Rav Chiya bar Avin Amar Rav Huna shlosha shtarasein. In fact, there are really three shtaras. It's not just two cases. There's three cases. What's the third case? Trei hada amran. So two are the ones we just mentioned. Idach, the third case is im kadam mocher v'kasav esashtar. So this is very interesting. Take a look at the last Rashbam on the page. So im kadam mocher v'kasav means let's say I'm the seller. As the seller, I went ahead and proactively wrote the shtar. Now, what does that mean? Take a look at the Rashbam. Mishet tzarach lemos v'rotze limkar min nechasav lechavero upam shumosei sofer v'kosev shtar mechira kidei shem mezuman litno lolokeach kol shash yirtza limkar. So I will say this is very interesting. So let's say again, now we're transitioning in this third case. Rav Chiya bar Avin is mentioning Rav Huna. This third case is a sale case. So I will say, sale case is like this. I know that I need money. So I know the way I'm going to get money is I'm going to sell off property. So I go ahead and I'm going to be selling off land. So what happens? Obviously, to sell land, I need a shtar. To have a shtar, I need a sofer. Let's say I don't have constant access to a scribe, to a sofer. So it happens to be I'm in town one day, I see the sofer, I say, sofer, do me a favor. Write up for me a shtar that says that Silber is selling to Reuven, field A for $50,000. Now, that transaction did not happen, right? It did not happen. So we'll say, so at first blush, I would say, you can't write a shtar like that. You can't start writing shtaros about transactions that have not happened. Now, the reason I'm doing it is because for me, right now I have access to the sofer. I'm going to need the shtar. I anticipate paying. Therefore, I want to write it up for myself. Kosev es shtar. So Rav Chiya bar Avin says in Rav Huna that this is mutter. You're allowed to do this. Amud beis. Ke'ose sheshaninu. And we've learned this principle. Kosvin shtar lemocher afa pi she'ein lokeach imo. That you have the ability to write a shtar for a seller, even though the purchaser is not with him. In other words, we'll say, I have the ability to write a proactive shtar. As a seller, I have the ability to write a proactive shtar. Now, again, look at Rashbam, top Rashbam on 77b, Ayin Zayin Obeis, Kosa Sheshaninu, Shemutar Lasos came, Afa Pi de Mechse Kishikra. Now, we'll say, here's what's interesting. You think about this, why should I be allowed to do that? That's a false document. That document is false. There's no transaction. It never happened. I didn't sell anything. Reuven didn't give me any money. So why am I allowed, the seller, why am I allowed to write that document? He says, this Gemara says very simply, De'ein kan hefsid l'shum adam ela l'mocher atzmo. They both say, there is only one person in peril by such a shtar. Right? Who is imperiled by the shtar? Who? Only one person? Me. the seller, right? Why? Because I have everything to lose and very little to gain. Because what could happen over here? What's the danger? If I lose that shtar, and Ruvain, or someone named Ruvain finds that shtar, right? I'm in big trouble. Because now someone else has a document that says I sold something to them. And if you're able to furnish that in Beis Din, you may be able to make a very compelling argument that could cause the extraction of property from me. So because I, the seller, am the only one in danger over here, the ein kan have to shum adam el mocher atzmo shem yover ashtar yimsen lokeach shakasav bishmo yitan shalacho men azamocher ve'i hu lo chay shlachi anon lo chay shena bishvilo. So we'll say, if I am willing to go ahead and take that risk, so if I am the seller willing to go ahead and take that risk and say, you know what, for me, the benefit, or I should say the benefit of having the shtar written up now outweighs any potential risk. So if I'm willing to take that risk, then the halacha essentially allows me to do it. Also, that last phrase in the Rashbam is very profound, right? V'ihu lo chayesh lahachi. If I am not concerned, anan lo chashinan b'shvilo. We cannot be concerned for him. See, I will say, at the end of the day, halacha is there to protect us from a variety of different things, right? The Rebbeinu Shalom creates many different prohibitions in order to safeguard us from committing chait. Chazal came along and erected many protective barriers to prevent us from sin. This system could help us as long as we help ourselves. But if we are not willing to help ourselves, if I'm not willing to put in the effort, if I'm not willing to work hard, if at the end of the day, hulo chayesh lahachi, if I'm not willing to be concerned with my own spiritual welfare, my own spiritual development, then anan lo chashinan bishvilo. The halacha can't worry more about you than you worry about yourself. The Ribono Shel Olam creates so many protective boundaries so that we could stay on the right derech. Chazal created so many protective boundaries so that we could stay on the right derech. The halacha cares about us. The Ribono Shel Olam cares about us. Torah cares about us. But as much as everyone else cares about me, I have to care about me. And if I don't take responsibility for me, if I don't take responsibility for my own development, if I don't take the reins of my own existence, no one, including HaKadosh Baruch Hu, has the ability to help me. Such an incredible yesod. Too often, we outsource our success to others. Right? I hinge my success or my ability to develop on other people. As we always speak about, the buck of your life stops with you. The reins of your life are within your hands. Baruch Hashem, we have an incredible cheering section. The Rebbeinu Shalom is in our cheering section. Chazal are in our cheering section. Shulchan Aruch is in our cheering section. Everyone trying to create a whole variety of things in order to allow us to be successful. But we have to make that decision for our own personal success in order to achieve those true milestones of personal success. Anyway, the Gemara goes weiter. So this is why this is important. Now the Gemara goes on. The Gemara goes, so the Kodesh Shoshana, as we've learned, you can write a document of sale. You can write a document of sale for the seller, even though again the purchaser is not with him. And therefore, what's the halacha? Kevan shehechsek zeh bekarko nikna shtar imo nikna shtar bechol makom shu. Now, and something interesting happens. So let's play this out. So remember again, on a Tuesday, I went ahead, I came in, I found the sofer. So what did I do? I go ahead and I tell the sofer, can you go ahead and write up a document for me that says that I sold a field to Ruvain for $50,000. Great. So now comes Friday, I run into Ruvain and I say, Ruvain, you want to do this deal? Ruvain says yes. Fantastic. We already have shtar written up. So what's the halacha? Once Ruvain goes ahead and takes possession of the karka, how do you take possession of karka? Let's say chazaka. Keep it easy, right? Chazaka, he puts up a fence. Once Ruvain takes possession of the karka, he acquires the shtar. Right? So that's shtar ima b'chol makom shehu. V'zoi sheshanim, this is the principle that we've learned. Nechasim she'in lan achrayis, niknin in nechasim sheish lan achrayis, b'kesef v'shtar v'chazaka. I will say this is a famous principle that we've learned many times throughout Shas. That literally, again, movable property can be acquired with real property, with kesef, shtar, and chazaka. So in other words, once you acquire real property, you could acquire movable property along with it as well. So Reuven acquires the field, he acquires the shtar, which was already written before the transaction along with it. We'll say, what does this have to do with our topics? Remember again, what did we just say before? We just said before that Ameimar said that the halacha is That osios niknos b'mesira. Right, that all you need to acquire a loan document is mesira, is giving over of the document, handing over of the document, and that you don't need a shtar. And in fact, again, Amira said, why don't you need a shtar? Because you can't acquire a shtar with a shtar. So the Gemara is now challenging that assertion. Is that true? In other words, you can't acquire words with words. The shtar essentially represents words, right? Because a shtar records a transaction that took place, words. So you can't acquire words with words. The Gemara says, really, is that true? Now, the Gemara is bringing up this case as proof that you can acquire words with words. How is this a proof? Take a look at the Rashbam. The Rashbam says over here, he says, if you look at the Rashbam, Bekesef b'shtar bechazaka, he says, Bekesef shekiba min hakarka o shehechsikba, niknin gam metaltalin. So remember again, going back to our field case. So when Reuven acquires the field, whether he's acquiring the field with money or he's acquiring the field with chazaka, once he acquires the field, he acquires the shtar along with it. Listen to this. Hashta, the shtar b'mili ba'alma mikni, shenisratz ha'mocher liknos lelokeach, v'afal pi shelo ba'ashtar liodo, delokeach kanile. So we'll say, so we're assuming right now, it's fascinating havamina, that the Gemara is saying that pretty much what happens over here is like this. Once Reuven agrees that he's going to go ahead and buy the land, that almost like that agreement gives him the shtar. So it's almost like his verbal agreement to engage in the transaction allows him to, which is words, allows him to acquire the shtar. So that's mili b'mili. That's words acquiring words. Kol shekein le'el b'shtar mikni di luhacha. Di luhacha afilu b'mili gridi servose. The Gemara says, but no, it's an incorrect characterization of the transaction. Agov shiny. Now let's say, this is not mili b'mili. This is not words. This is not words. How is Reuven acquiring the shtar? A kinyan agov. Kinyan agov. So what's a kinyan agov? That you could acquire metal, you could acquire movable property, literally again, agav, on the back of real property. So in other words, the way this works is, this is not words acquiring with words, or shtar acquiring with the shtar. This is that when Reuven does a true proprietary act on the karka. However you're doing it, the chazaka or kesef, Reuven acquires the karka, Reuven acquires the shtar, which is metaltal, movable property, agov, by dint of the karka. And we've seen this concept before many times. We'll say, by the way, agov, not to be confused necessarily with kinyan chatzar, right? In order to utilize kinyan chatzar, what has to happen? The metaltalin has to be in the karka, or on the karka, right? In other words, if let's say if I were to place the shtar inside of the field and then sell the field to Reuven would acquire the karka, right? And then he would acquire the shtar because the shtar is situated on the chatzar, it's on the sada, on the field itself. Kinyan agov is something different. Kinyan agov could be the shtar, it's a totally different location. But what I could do is I could acquire movable property when I acquire real property. On the back of the real property, I could acquire the movable property as well. After all, we've learned the hamat beya. Take a look at a coin for a second. The lo nikni bechalipin. So a coin cannot be acquired through kinyan chalipin. Va'agav ara nikni. But yet a coin can be acquired agav ara. You could acquire money through a kinyan agav. So in other words, you could transfer ownership of money on the back of or by dint of real property. The Gemara tells a story over here. So therefore, again, just even before we get to the story, so the point is the Gemara disproved this assertion. So really what we're left with over here is still a machlokes Rav Papa, ultimately again, and a meimar, about how you go ahead and convey a loan document. Well, let's just finish up the sugya, then we'll go back to the halacha l'maisa. So the Gemara says as follows. So the Gemara just tells a story over here of acquiring money on the back of real property. So the Gemara says over here, listen to this. Daha kihad Rav Papa. It's a great story. We've actually had this before. Where does this appear? Baba Kama. So the Gemara says kihad Rav Papa. How will they trace her alfei zuzei bechazai? It's interesting. Rav Papa had lent 12,000 zuz to some borrower in Bechozai. Rav Papa wanted his money back. Remember, we had the story. What was the problem? So Rav Papa wanted to send a shaliach. He wanted to send an agent. He wanted to send an agent to pick up his money. So we're going to see he sent Rav Shmuel Bar Acha to pick up the money. The problem was what? The problem was that the borrower did not want to give the money to Rav Shmuel Bar Acha. Why not? Because if something would happen to the money along the way, who would be responsible for the money? Right, the borrower. So really what the borrower really said to Rav Papa was, Rav Papa, if you want your money, I'm happy to pay it to you, come and get it. Because the borrower is saying, and understandably so, if I'm going to repay, I'm going to give the money to someone, I want to be done. I want to be done. I don't want to give 12,000 zuz to some shaliach, and then the shaliach falls asleep at the wheel, or whatever, he's robbed, or something else, or ones, and as suddenly the borrower says, I'm responsible still for another 12,000 zuz. So the borrower did not want to give the money to Rav Papa's shaliach. So Rav Papa had a great idea. So what did he do? So the Gemara says, so akninu nehilu v'Rashul bar Acha agav aseifa debeisei. So what happened? So Rav Papa gave over to Rav Shmuel a portion of land, or literally again he gave him the threshold of his house. So he gave him karka. And through the karka, he gave him over possession of the 12,000 zuz. Now, only do this with someone who you trust very much. Because essentially what Rav Papa did is, he gave Rav Shmuel bar Acha ownership over the money. So he gave him he conveyed to him ownership of the money, agav karka. I'm giving you karka, and on the back of the karka, so to speak, I'm giving you movable property money. So now we'll say now Shlomo bar Acha becomes the real owner of the money. So therefore now when Shlomo bar Acha shows up in Bechozai, and they're willing to give him money. Why are they willing to give him the money? Why? Because this is when the borrower gives him over the money, they're done. So what happens? So Shlomo bar Acha is coming back with the money. Ki asa, as he was coming back from Bechozai, nafak la'apei at-tabach. So again, Rav Papa went out a far way to greet him. He was so excited. He was so grateful that Shmuel bar Acha took this upon himself. Okay, so the point of that story was just to illustrate that halacha l'maisa, you could convey money through agav karka. Okay, so before we go on, so how do we paskin? So remember again, there's two outstanding halachas over here. Number one, I will say, is let's work backwards. How do you give over a loan document? So both say, so that Rambam paskins, like Rav Papa, that halacha l'maisa, if you want to go ahead and give over a loan document, you require both mesira and the shtar. That's how the Rambam paskins. So again, let's play this out. I lent $10,000 to Ruvain. I now want to sell the document. By the way, it's sell or gift. It doesn't really matter. The point is, I want to assign this loan now to Shimon. Right? So whether Shimon's paying for it or Shimon's getting it as a gift, simply giving him over the loan document is not enough. The Rambam paskins, there has to be an accompanying shtar, and in that shtar it says, I, Silber, sell to Shimon this loan document, v'chol shibuda debei, and any liens and encumbrances that are included in this document as well. So it needs mesira and a shtar. Incredible. That's how we pass it like that. What about the boat? Remember again, all of this got started with a boat. How do you acquire a boat? So again, remember, you could acquire a boat with Moshiach, but let's pull this all together. Very exciting when these sugyas come together. Remember again, in order to do Moshiach requires that's what? You're pulling it into your own domain. Right? So remember, but presupposing you could do Moshiach, which either means either A, right, you're pulling it into your property, B, the boat is situated in jointly owned property, or C, it's in a simta. Right? You could pull it into a simta. So assuming one of those three things, Moshiach will work by the boat, how much do you have to go ahead and pull the boat? The Rambam paskins like Shmuel, that you have to pull it an entire boat length. Right? It's not enough like Rav just to pull it a little bit, an entire boat length. So two important nuggets of halacha l'maisa. Say Gemara is great. Right? Sometimes don't you feel like if only I discovered this when I was younger? Right? How different. If only I felt the same geschmack when I was younger, how different maybe my life would be. All right. In any event, the Gemara goes back to. Let's finish up. I will say. So remember again, the Mishnah then went on and said that when you buy a boat, there are a number of things that are excluded from this sale. Right? Things that were excluded from this sale. So again, my antiki, what are antiki? So else I say, I understand the other items, right? The slaves are not included. But what is antiki? Amra Papa, iska didigava. It refers to the merchandise that's on the boat. So else I say, halach l'maisa, again, if I'm selling Reuven a boat, I'm telling you the boat, I'm selling you a boat, and I happen to have some of my merchandise on the boat, the merchandise is not included. Now, of course, will say, what's the caveat to that? The caveat to that is if I tell Reuven, I'm selling you the boat, and what? Everything that's in it, then under those circumstances, the merchandise is included in the boat. Incredible. All right, I will say, Mishnah, Machar Sakara. So again, more examples of this in very interesting cases. Machar Asakaron. So again, if I sell a wagon, lo Machar Asaprados. ultimately, again, I don't sell the mules. So again, a wagon is pulled by mules. So if I sell Reuven the wagon, that doesn't automatically mean that I'm selling him the mules. Machar es haprados, lo machar es hakara. Similarly, again, if I go ahead and I sell the prados, if I sell the mules, that doesn't automatically mean that I have sold the wagon. Machar es hatzemed, lo machar es habakar. If I go ahead and I sell a yoke, so I'm going to say a yoke is normally pulled by oxen, but when you sell a yoke doesn't automatically come with oxen. Machar es habakar, lo machar es hatzemed. If I sell the oxen, it doesn't automatically come with a yoke. Okay, fine, makes sense. Rabbi Yehuda says, well, so now we're going to be introduced to a concept that I think we've been thinking about this entire time. Rabbi Yehuda Omer hadamim modiin. Rabbi Yehuda says there's a very easy way to tell about what's included in a transaction. How do you tell? What's the price tag? What's the price tag? You could tell based on what a person is paying. That is generally a pretty good indicator about what it is that they're buying. Hadamim modiin. So I'll say first. So for example. Ketzad Amar li machar li tzmidcha b'masayim zuz. So, for example, if I say to Reuven, go ahead and go ahead and sell me the yoke, right? And I'll buy the yoke for 200 zuz. Now, we'll say everyone knows that you don't pay 200 zuz for a yoke. That is a lot of money. So it must be that if I'm paying 200 zuz for a yoke, what's coming with that? Oxen. Animals. Because again, who says it doesn't make sense, price doesn't make sense. So there's Hadavar Yadua, She'ein Hatzamed b'masayim zuz. Everyone knows that you don't pay 200 zuz for a yoke. So both sides. So this is and again, I think we've been thinking about this whole time. That again, clearly, there's a market, right? So if I'm paying above market, doesn't that mean that perhaps something else has been included? Rabbi Yehuda says absolutely yes. So if it's clear that you're paying quote unquote overpriced, or you're paying way more than market value for a particular item, it must be that accessories are included. So therefore, again, I'm paying 200 zuz for a yoke. No one pays 200 zuz for a yoke. That's ridiculous. So therefore, it must be oxen are included. The Chum say no. Ein hadamim raya. No, Chum say the amount of money that you paid is in no way indicative of what is being included in the transaction. So we'll say, so here's what's interesting. That's fine. But then, what do the Chachamim do with inflated price tags? Right? So we'll say, look at the Rashbam for just a moment. It's two lines up from before the Rashbam gets wide, the really wide lines. In Adamim Raya, Ela, b'matana bikesh litin lo hamosar. So again, one possibility is we'll say, so now watch this, let's play this out, right? So I'm selling a yoke to Reuven. The yoke is the price tag of the yoke is 200 zuz. So let's say, for argument's sake, normally again a yoke is 50 zuz. I'm paying. Reuven's paying 150 zuz over market. The Reuven says it's clear based on the price tag. The accessories, i.e., the oxen, must be included, assuming that 200 zuz price point makes sense for a yoke plus oxen. The Chachamim say no. If we're contracted to sell a yoke, then it's a yoke. There's no oxen. Chachamim, that's fine, but what about the extra 150 zuz? So what are you doing with that? So look at the Rashbam. So possibility number one is Reuven's feeling very charitable. The extra 150 zuz, it's a gift. It's a gift. Inami lehavi mekachtos ki damina b'gemara v'yachsol ma'osav v'yitol tzmado. The other possibility is that no, maybe I'm overcharging for the yoke. And I remember again, if I'm overcharging, that's fine. There's halachos avona. What are the halachos? Remember again, halachos avona? Less than a sixth, negligible, and we forget about it. A sixth, the sale stands and the money has to be returned. More than a sixth, the transaction is voidable. So such what the Chum says like this, is we do not look at the price tag as an indicator as to what is involved or what is included in the sale. Rather, again, what we look at the price tag is simply the amount of money being paid. It could very well be that I have ridiculously overcharged Reuven, and maybe Reuven has grounds to claim ona, and maybe even has grounds to go ahead and be mevatel to negate the sale, to avoid the sale. That's fine. That's within Reuven's right. But halacha l'maisa, we do not look at the price tag as an indicator as to what is included in the transaction. Or to say differently, according to the Rabbanon, according to the Chachamim, what's included in the transaction? What is included? That which you articulated. So if we're contracted to go ahead and buy a yoke, then we're talking about a yoke and no other accessories. Rabbi Yehuda, if the price tag is inflated, then we're probably talking about the yoke and the accessories. Fundamental machlokas. Rabbi says, let's get to the Gemara. Very exciting. So Tani Rav Tachlifa bar Ma'arava kamei de Rabbi Avo. So Machar Asakaran, Machar Asapradus. So we'll say here's the problem. Rav Tachlifa bar Ma'arava, right of Eretz Yisroel, said before Rabbi Avo that if you sell the wagon, included in the sale of the wagon are the mules. So we'll say this is a contradiction. To Amrlei, so the Baha'anan Tanan, Baha'anan, Lo Machar Tanan. Here's the problem, we'll say. Right, our version of the Mishnah is that what? You didn't sell it. So what's going on over here? In other words, our version of the Mishnah is, if you bought the wagon, you didn't buy the mules. Yet, when Rav Tachlifa says this over in front of Rabbi Avo, he says, if you sell the wagon, you do acquire the mules. So what's going on over here? Amar Le is Samye. So Rav Tachlifa said to Rabbi Avo, what should I do? Should I erase the brisa? In other words, what should I do with this ruling? Amar Le lo titargem masnisecha ba'adukin bo. No, rather Rabbi said this is actually very fascinating. So rather interpret your brisa as dealing with a case of where the mules are attached to the wagon. So this is very interesting. So we'll say what the Gemara is suggesting now is as follows: that the Mishnah's case that says when you buy the wagon you don't get the mules is talking about a case where the mules are not hitched to the wagon. So in that case, it is clear that all you are doing is buying the wagon. Masha'in came, if the mules are hitched to the wagon and you buy the wagon, then halacha l'maisa, the transactional assumption is mules included. Mules included. Fascinating. Look at the Rashbam for just a moment. So we'll say first of the wide lines in the Rashbam. Tetargim masnisecha b'shadukin bo shekoshrin biyachad b'shas hamechira. So again, it must be that according to the approach of Rav Tachlifa bar Ma'arava, the mules are attached to the wagon at the time of the sale. Hilchach hakol machar. Therefore, it makes sense. I will say that when you buy the wagon, you buy everything the wagon and as is, with the attached mules. Umasnisin b'she'in adukin. And our Mishnah is talking about a case where the mules are not attached to the wagon. Beautiful. Let's go back to her. Umachar as hadsamed lo machar as abakar. So what's I said? Remember again. Let's go back to the Mishnah. Right. So the Mishnah said, if I buy the yoke doesn't come with the oxen. You buy the oxen doesn't come with the yoke. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. In other words, this seems to be pretty pashut. Hey chidami, what's the case? Pshita. So we'll say, if we're talking about a place, now remember, we've seen this before, that when it comes to these type of transactions, so much is also based on the way people speak, right? And what people call different things. So if let's play this out for just a moment, right? So I'm going ahead and I'm selling Ruvain a yoke, right? So now the Mishnah says, if you sell Ruvain a yoke, oxen not included. So the Gemara says, well, let's analyze here. If we're dealing in a locale where the yoke is called the yoke and oxen are called oxen, then pshita. Then obviously one is not included with the other. Then sinda zabinle, bakar lo zabinle. So we'll say, so obviously then, if we're talking about a place where a yoke is called the yoke and oxen are called the oxen, then if I sell Ruvain a yoke, what am I selling him? A yoke. What am I not selling him? Oxen. Ve'elo dikarele nami lebakar sinda kulin zabinle. I'll say, but if we're talking about a case where oxen are sometimes also called a yoke, right? Sometimes people also call oxen a yoke, then what? They will say, I could hear that when I sell Ruvain a yoke means what? Yoke means the yoke and the oxen. So which one is it? In other words, in order to define the halach over here, we have to define how people talk in this particular locale. To which the Gemara says, Lo tzricha ba'asra dekarli litzimda tzimda ulabakar bakar. Now we're talking about a case where in this location they call a yoke, and oxen. However, the ikanami dekaru labakar tzimda. This is interesting. But there are some people who also call oxen a yoke. So I'll say this always is like the Gemara's answer in this type of discussion, right? So really, the majority of people call a yoke and oxen. But there are some people who call oxen a yoke. Okay? So what's our problem? Our problem now is I go ahead and I contract with Reuven to go ahead and sell a yoke. So the shaila now is, okay, the majority of people in our locale call an ox, a yoke, but there are some people who call oxen a yoke as well. So now the shaila becomes, when I sell Reuven a yoke, so what is it? Am I selling him a yoke, just a yoke without any oxen, or yoke with oxen? So Moshe says, now watch this. Now the Gemara says, okay, so now Rabbi Yehuda Savar Hadami Modian. Rabbi Yehuda says, it's simple. It's very simple. How much is Reuven paying? Because Rabbi say there is going to be a fundamental and profound difference between the price tag of a yoke by itself versus a yoke with oxen. So Rabbi Yehuda says, just look at the price tag, and the price tag will dictate what is included in the transaction. Rabbanan Savri Ein Hadamim Raya. The Rabbanan say, no, you can't look at the price tag. The price tag is not a raya. So we'll say, okay, so fine, that's a machlokes in Mishnah. Now here's the problem. This is fascinating. So let's go with this. So according to Rabbi Yehuda has a very simple, in general, Rabbi Yehuda has a very simple way of clarifying all of these cases. Just look at the price. So look at the price. The price will tell you what is or what's not included in a general way. Certainly, Rabbi say the difference in price tag between a plain yoke versus a yoke with oxen is going to be significantly different enough that you should be able to see just from the price tag itself what's included. The Rabbanan said we don't look at price. So let's analyze this for just a moment. So we'll say, let's assume for our purposes right now that a yoke is $1,000. A yoke is $1,000 and that oxen are $1,000 for our purposes of our example over here. So what happens now? Reuven pays me $2,000. So according to the Rabbanon, because we're living in a locale where sometimes oxen are also called the yoke, what we do is we look at the price tag. The price tag is $2,000. It's clear that it's yoke and oxen that are being included. The Rabbanon will say we don't look at the price tag. Fine. Now it says in the Gemara, so we're not looking at the price tag. Now, if we're not looking at the price tag, then I will say that means that Reuven has effectively done what? He's paid $2,000 for a yoke, which translates in halacha to what? Oh no. And clearly more than the 1/6 threshold, in which case the transaction is voided. So the Gemara is asking over here is according to the Rabbanan, if you're not going to look at the price tag as indicative of what's included in the transaction, that means that if we contracted to buy a yoke, then it's a yoke, which means Reuven way overpaid for a yoke. If he way overpaid for a yoke, then there's no transaction because it's ona. Ona voids the sale. So what's going on over here? Top of Ayin Ches, 78A. V'chitema, bittul mekach l'Rabbanan leslo. So maybe you'll say the Rabbanan don't hold the bittul mekach. Maybe the Rabbanan don't hold that ona over a 6th voids the transaction. But Tanan, we learned Rabbi Yehuda Omer Hamocher Sefer Torah Behemo Margalis in Lenona that if you go ahead and you sell a Sefer Torah Behemo or Margalis, right, the Sefer Torah, an animal or a precious jewel, there's no ona. Now we'll say we've actually seen this. We'll say, you know what we're going to do? We'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up at the top of the Amid Emiras Hashem tomorrow and resolve because this machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanon, Rabbi Yehuda and the Chum, this is a big one. This is a big one and exceptionally important. The Emiras Hashem resolution tomorrow. Shkoyach.